What is probably pretty obvious from our last few episodes is that we are likely need to make some changes in order to have healthy ministries. None of us really likes change, as it can be risky, and in the transition, many unintended negative consequences can occur. So how do we make these changes in a way that does not negatively impact our church and our ministry? Okay, we're on page 23 in chapter 4 of section 3 in our coaching guide. In the corresponding workshop for this section, Change Dynamics, I discuss in greater detail some of the dynamics that occur in an organization through the change process. In order to have a healthy church, ongoing change is inevitable. Yet walking a church or ministry through the transition process is not always so straightforward. What often happens is more problems are created as we go through the necessary changes. How do we ensure this does not happen with us? So at this point, I want to review some of the principles of change and how we can manage people through the process in a healthy way. The first thing you need to be aware of is that for most people, the prospect of learning new ways of thinking, feeling, and acting creates anxiety. In order to lessen the natural anxiety this causes, we often deny the need for change or try to delay it. Fears, both real and perceived, compound our anxiety. We will often fear the feeling of being out of control, or what will happen if we cannot function with the new changes. We also can fear loss of our own personal identity and no longer fitting into the group with which we've grown accustomed. So we first need to recognize that change is necessary and even inevitable. Then we need to help members come to a place of safety so that they can accept the necessary changes. Unfortunately, many leaders assume that because they have the role of leader, it is their obligation and responsibility to paternalistically make the change in their organization, kind of make changes for everyone else. This hierarchical approach rarely works to change the culture or values of those they're leading. This is something we looked at when we discussed the need to change values first before we try changing behavior. Failing to do this usually breeds resentment and a growing distance between leaders and members. An alternative to this paternalistic leadership style is one of empowering and releasing each member, as we see in Ephesians 4:11-6. As with a shared vision, a shared approach to decision making is more healthy. It seeks to build trust by speaking the truth to each other in love. It also gives each member the right to say no and assume that they too can hear from God. This leads to a joint ownership of the change and the new vision. And this serves to reflect the value that each member in the church needs each other. This style of leadership is a servant leadership one based on Jesus' model. I cover this in more detail in the mentoring material as well as the mentoring podcast series. As leaders remove the symbols of power, they can begin to allow the expression of biblical truth of the priesthood of all believers. This does not mean that some members of the group will not have greater influence than others, or that the leaders serve the community by having to sometimes make the difficult decisions. But what it does ensure is that the biblical value of humility is a starting point from which we treat others. I'm suggesting that there's another approach to change rather than the top-down approach that often produces all sorts of negative fallout. A more collaborative approach may take longer and be a bit more messy, but typically results in greater buy-in by the majority of the members. See, leadership has an important role in the change process. Instead of merely stating the new direction or the change that is about to happen, they can prepare people for change in several ways. First, we can provide a compelling positive vision for a better future, one that will be the result of proposed changes. Without this, change can seem rather meaningless for most people, who have seen many leaders with good ideas come and go. Secondly, we can also educate and train others so that they understand the new system or how things will work as the change is implemented. This can be accomplished in both formal and informal ways and works in both large and small groups. Another way to prepare others for change is to provide a safe place for where others can be coached through the change and where they can feel safe to provide feedback throughout the process. This includes providing role models throughout this process. Fifthly, we can provide supportive groups in which problems that arise in the change process can also be discussed. Often, if people have the opportunity to discuss the process and feel their concerns are being listened to, it will diffuse some of the opposition to the change. And finally, once the change has been implemented, the new ways of thinking and acting need to be reinforced by a complementary ministry structure and encouragement that reflects the new values. With regards to the overall ministry, it must be understood that changing one part of the system has an impact on the whole system, as we saw in the previous episode. The obvious point is that there's always a balance needed between the needs of the group and the aspirations of the individual. At times, this is reflected by the group needing more freedom, and other times there's a greater need for stability and predictability and a bit less freedom. On one hand, we can lead towards stagnation, or on the other hand, we can lead towards chaos and confusion. To be a healthy church, a balanced equilibrium is needed, where these two tensions are balanced according to the need.
This series is based upon our MCNet coaching and ministry guides. There are basically two parts to the series, 12 episodes that cover the 5 sections of the coaching guide and 18 episodes that cover the 8 workshops of the ministry guide. As a team, we have had the opportunity to serve in various parts of the world over the last decades using these materials to equip leaders and coach ministry teams throughout our ministry coaching network. This leadership team coaching in episodes 1 to 12 are intended for the core leadership team and cover big picture issues that affect the whole ministry. Here, issues regarding sharing vision, developing healthy culture, bringing about change, and multiplication strategies are discussed. There's a playbook at the end of each of these first 12 coaching episodes, which serves as a guide to help implement these church health and growth tools. These first 12 episodes then coincide with the ministry team workshops in episodes 13 to 30, which are designed to equip every member as they serve in the body. You can also check out our Christian Leadership Institute training program. This is a unique approach to ministerial training based on a competency-focused mentorship. The free materials for this series, as well as the coaching and ministry guides, are available from the links in the description box below. Just as many others have, we are sure you will find our other Leadership Matters podcast series helpful for you and your ministry.
So just to repeat, change refers to the actual situation that's changing, such as the new house, new job, new policy, etc. This is the external tangible elements that are going to change. Transition, on the other hand, has to do with the internal psychological processes that individuals go through in response to dealing with the change. This difference is important for us to recognize. For while making the external change may be easy, it requires more time and effort for the transition to occur. See, to underestimate this reality will negatively impact people's acceptance of the change and their healthy transition to the new normal. For example, while someone may move quickly to another city, it takes time for them to feel at home in their new city. The actual change can be done in a day, but the transition will take much longer. Where to go shopping, where's the hospital, and so on. See, allowing individuals this time to transition will give the greatest opportunity for the change to occur with minimal conflict. Well, conflict often occurs not because of the change itself, but due to improper management of the process. This reflects the 3 components of any change. The first is attitudinal and motivational. It is most important, and needs of the membership need to be taken into account by the leader. Secondly, there are technical issues which have to do with the system itself and how the change will be implemented and sustained. And finally, and very important, is the issue of timing. To be successful, it must be the right decision at the right time. Leadership creates the right atmosphere for all 3 of these components. But you may ask, if change is so important and even inevitable, why do most of us resist it? Well, the first thing to realize is that if we don't feel like we've initiated the change, it's likely we will not accept it as our own. Change usually means a change of routine, and as we all know, changing habits is difficult. Most of us also fear the unknown, and so if the future of the change is unknown, it produces fear. We are actually more comfortable with the old known problems than the unknown new solutions. We also can resist change if we feel that the purpose is unclear. Change also brings with it the possibility of failure, and most of us assume that failure is inevitable with a large change. This leads us to think that we will lose more than we will gain in the change. Basically, we are more comfortable with the way things are, the status quo. So we will often have a negative outlook on the change and associate it with disappointment. See, if members lack respect for the leadership, they will often negatively link change with the leadership, and this becomes a problem moving forward. We often have to help people through this process because the fact is that change may mean personal loss for some. Everyone associated with the change is part of one of three groups. Those who will lose something in the change, those who are neutral, and those who will benefit from the change. As leadership, we need to know who is in each group. Since change usually requires additional commitment, it is often resisted. And finally, just basic narrow-mindedness can be resistance to change, resulting in people committing to the status quo in spite of the obvious benefits of the change. See, all these reasons why people resist change can be rather daunting and cause us to avoid it completely. But there are several reasons that can be taken into account to help others through change and transition. First, we can help members share verbally what they feel they are losing. This may not be objectively true, but their feelings on the subject are very real. We need to think through who will lose what and what they will have to let go of. If we implement this change, what will end or what will be over for everyone? This also means that we need to allow people to grieve the perceived or real loss. Just as with other grieving, the signs, of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and so on, we must allow people the opportunity to grieve. I think it is also fair to compensate in some way those who will bear the greatest burden of the change or loss. Perhaps we can in some way replace the loss in order to help individuals with what they are giving up. We can also help people say goodbye. My experience has been that you can never give too much information. If you withhold the negative or downplay it, people eventually experience it and then resent you for covering it up. So we need to define what is over and what will not change or is not over. See, in the absence of this, people often overreact and assume more will be given up than actually will be. A final tip is to intentionally mark the endings. Have a clear way of not dragging on the end for too long. All of these can be wrapped up in the principle of treating others in the past with respect. This means letting people take the piece of the past with them without shaming or blaming them for being part of that past. Now, as I wrap up the short discussion regarding helping those we serve through the change process, let me offer a few more practical steps. First, be sure to place influencers in roles where they can influence others. These early adopters can then help others who may be struggling with the change. Also ensure that you and your team have emotional support during the transition. Without this, it's going to be a long, painful few months or years ahead. Then also, before going public, make sure you have the support of key influencers or leaders. Be proactive by enlisting who the influencers are. How many members will be directly affected? How many will be indirectly affected? How many will be positive? How many will be negative? Which group is the majority? Which group is most influential? See, if the group is generally positive, it is effective to bring influencers together. However, if the group is basically negative, then it's more effective to meet influencers individually. And you know better the key motivators then of each influencers. When it comes to the actual announcement at the meeting, there should be three main items. First, information items, then there's study items not to be decided, and then there's action items that need to be decided on, more than just those that are just going to be studied. It's helpful to encourage influencers to influence others informally ahead of time, as this prepares others for the meeting. And finally, show how change will benefit them individuals. At this point, it's not always so helpful to take the perspective of the organization. This is secondary in most people's thinking. They are more concerned with how the change will affect them personally, not the organization. As previously mentioned, we then need to give people time so they can embrace the change on their own. And just a final word of caution. If we move too quickly with the change, it means we generally fail to grasp all the ramifications and the depth of the reaction of others, some of which will not be based on maybe factual reality. See, in this scenario, people become isolated, kind of like a divide and conquer mentality. The danger of moving too fast is that we don't have the structure to sustain the change. In other words, we don't have all our ducks in a row. On the other hand, if we move too slowly, we can miss the window of opportunity, not striking while the iron is hot, so to speak. If the change is really drawn out, others also have a less tolerance for mistakes, and a certain apathy can be created in the group. Kind of like, who really cares anyway? Let's just keep things the way they are. The danger is that people will begin to take ownership of the status quo and will never want to embrace change. Okay, a few thoughts on change and transition. You can listen to a more detailed treatment of this topic in Change Dynamics Workshop, which is in episodes 22 and 23. So as we wrap up this episode, let's look at the playbook for this section. To begin with, here are a couple questions to consider. What have you learned about the process of change that will help you bring transition in your own ministry? Do you have an empowering and releasing style of ministry, or is it still kind of more top and down? And thirdly, discuss as a team recent situation where you as the leaders did not allow enough time for your people to make the transition. And what did you learn from this, and what will you do different in the future? Now, for each of these sections of the coaching series, we provide ministry team workshops which are designed to help anyone serving in the body apply these principles. For this section, the workshop Change Dynamics is in episodes 22 and 23. This provides additional principles for helping people and organizations through the change process. As always, our goal is to reproduce healthy leaders who will then be able to build healthy teams and reproduce healthy ministries. You'll notice a link to my 5-fold ministry podcast series, which views the ministry flowchart and life cycle through the lens of the equipping gifts we find in Ephesians chapter 5. There are also various resources available in this section, including a relational health survey for leaders and organizations and a 4-quadrant leadership assessment. Now, based upon the previously introduced church health and effectiveness assessment, the ministry flowchart and life cycle tools are introduced here to help leaders return an organization to health so that it will naturally grow. Our pathways of implementation this time use the question from the church health and evaluation assessment for leaders to understand the gaps in the overall ministry activities as well as where they are at in the life cycle of the organization. I've also provided a guidelines page which we have used to integrate the coaching sections and workshops. The elliptical diagram explains the flow of the coaching sessions and workshops and how they fit together. The blue one illustrates how this material can be used within existing churches, and the brownish one for establishing new ministries. And you can get a link to all of these resources in the description box below. So now, as we transition to our next episode, I will be providing a great tool to help you see where your ministry is at and what changes may be necessary in order to have a balanced, healthy ministry. And let me re-emphasize, our goal is not change for change's sake, but returning our church and ministries to greater health so that they will be able to grow. And as we've seen, only healthy organisms are able to reproduce.